Ryan. How you doing?
Hello, Rachel. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited. We're here again to talk about some Babylon 5. Oh, that nefarious Babylon 5. The unpopular with the people Babylon 5. How about yourself? How are you going?
Pretty good.
Just pretty good?
Yeah.
Just relaxed, comfortable,
Mhm.
feeling energetic at all? Perky? Perhaps? All right, let's get into it, Rachel. Could you walk us all through the podcast, what we do here?
Here at YumYumPod, named after the iconic line from Star Trek Discovery from Commander 9D, who at the end of Season 2, and it's the Season 2 finale, in fact.
Oh, what a finale it was. We had many moments, AI sausage, an admiral getting completely destroyed by a photon torpedo when they could have saved her. Spock was there and he did stuff too. So many moments, but the moment that struck a chord with us is, of course, as you were saying,
Commander 9D responding to proposed murder of this season's antagonist being to say, yum yum, flick her hair, and lick her lips.
Yeah. Not necessarily all in that order, but she does do those three things, and is it baffling? Yes. Did we name our podcast after it because it was so baffling and bizarre? Yes. Were we a Star Trek Discovery rewatch podcast at one time? Yeah, we were. Now we are doing Babylon 5 as a rewatch. And so if you are new to this podcast and you're wondering, do they spoil it all? Yes. Yes, we do. That is our format. So beware of being spoiled for details in this series. So that you've been told. We are looking at an episode today that breaks the format, breaks the formula of Babylon 5, but that will not stop us from our little format of asking who would have said yum yum in this episode of Babylon 5 if this was written by Star Trek Discovery writers. Rachel, who is your YYE person? Yum Yum Energy.
The Senator.
Quantrell? He had that kind of vibe, didn't he? This is a really yum-yum-filled episode, if I've got to be honest with you. We've had a dry one or two recently. This one, Pike, it just went right up again. Quantrell's a great choice. I didn't have him in my list, but I understand why you do. I'm really tossing up between Londo, because his interviews are just reeking with YYE. But I'm going to give it to our main actress this episode, Cynthia Talkman. I thought she does a great job in the episode and definitely has, when she's doing her reporter moments, especially when she's walking through the Zocalo and the alien sector, she definitely has that smarmy, righteous energy in which she could have said to them, the human sector is in fact the alien sector, and their food is quite yum. Like, I could definitely see her doing that.
I have a counter. Also for Cynthia. But when she's like, did we get it? Did we get it?
The real Cynthia, yeah.
The real Cynthia. If the cameraman said yes and she said yum yum.
Or if the cameraman said yum yum. That would have been even more interesting. It would have given us a character. We would have been like, what's that guy's deal? Why did he say yum yum? Maybe because he was eating one of those lovely, lovely Zune burgers that they have on Babylon 5 that just go right down. Lou loves them. Lou loves cake and he loves burgers. As does Walker Smith, who, unfortunately, wouldn't it have been great if Walker Smith got an interview in this one? But hey. Let's not go too hog wild. Rachel, could you tell us all what episode we are watching and what the DVD description of this one has to say? Because people, we read the DVD descriptions of Babylon 5 because we have them and they are amazing and wonderful, and the IMDb and fan-made wiki descriptions are too weak and spineless in comparison to the strength of the DVDs. Rachel, tell us all.
This week's episode is episode 15 of season 2. And now for a word. Who could have imagined an interstellar news network crew being present as Centauri/Narn relations erupt into deadly conflict?
Not me.
Keep those cameras rolling. This ought to be a ratings smash.
This is equal to me to Born to the Purple's description, in which they say that Wiley Londo, in terms of how absurdly perfect in tone it is for the episode. I love that that reads as if this is a news description that, hey, tune in tonight as we have the ratings shall smash through as we were 36 hours, all that kind of stuff. I love that.
September 16th, 2259. The Interstellar Network News presents 36 Hours on Babylon 5 with your host, Cynthia Talkman, reporting live from the ISN News Center in Geneva.
I remember really enjoying this episode on previous rewatches of being like, oh, it's the one where it breaks the format and does something completely different. And on this rewatch, I was like, it's solid.
Yeah.
It didn't enthrall me as much as it's done it in previous watchings.
Understandable. I mean, on this rewatch, it had a little bit of a different oomph because, for people who don't know, we both did a guest spot on different episodes, but we both guested on another Babylon 5 podcast, the last best Babylon 5 podcast, and I talked about this episode. And so if people have heard me there, you'll get some repeats. But for this, I've enjoyed this episode very much. Now, it wasn't unique to me when I did see it, because when I saw it, it was obviously quite some time after this episode had aired, and there were many other shows in the interim of time, and maybe even before, of course, that have done this, where they really put themselves into the effort of looking at the usual show from an angle that we wouldn't usually see. So this being the news. Battlestar Galactica did this. Infamously, The West Wing did this as well. And there have obviously been multiple shows over the years that have just done a whole format of their show pretending to be a news or a current affair type program. I think of Brass Eye, for instance, being kind of similar to that, or I'm forgetting the name of it, but there was that British BBC, I think it's BBC, horror special that they did where they got real life journalists and real life faces that people trusted and knew to report upon this horrific ghostly story, and it scared people, but it was fake. It was all fake. So this is fun, though. When I watched it, I enjoyed it because I didn't expect Babylon 5 to do this and to really shine a spotlight on an element that's always been present, which is ISN. ISN has always been in the background of the show. It's been a great way and an obvious way to deliver exposition when needed throughout the run of the series, and to give world building. And we had become familiar with some background players from ISN. Obviously, the news anchor Jane, who isn't in this one, but yeah, it was when it came up on my first watch, I was a bit surprised. I thought, this is a weird way to take the show, and it really reminded me also of Paul Verhoeven stuff. It really reminded me of not Total Recall, of RoboCop and Starship Troopers.
Especially the Psychor ad.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I've always enjoyed this one. It's also different too when I rewatch it, because I think of its partner episode in season 4, which is the propaganda version of this episode. So it's kind of got this mirror counterpart to it that also colors how I look at this one, and how innocent and naive these days were, even though when you do see the news report, there's lots of the troublesome aspects of Earth littered throughout this one. The bigotry, the fear, the jingoism, the armchair quarterbacking, of course. But yeah, when I watched it today, when I watched it for this, I still thoroughly enjoyed myself. I thought this went down quickly. I thought it was still quite clever. I thought it gave us a marvelous look at our characters in a way that a traditionally written episode would not let us be able to, because our characters are performing here. And they are framed differently because ISN has an agenda. So the Narn are going to be framed in a more villainous, more off-putting light at points, and the Centauri are going to be given more leeway. And so that's interesting. It is very fun. I think it's a fun episode. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but it is a fun way to tell this particular type of story.
He's lying.
Then can you tell us why your ship opened fire on the Centauri transport?
I'll issue a statement after I've consulted with my government.
Are you saying your government sanctioned this attack?
No.
Do you think attacks of this nature put everybody aboard Babylon 5 in unnecessary jeopardy?
We are already in far greater jeopardy than you can possibly imagine.
I appreciate the way that it switches the format up, but it still really feels like this is the world of Babylon 5. We're getting a different viewpoint, but it's still the world that we're very familiar with. And I appreciate that, because it throws you off in an interesting way and allows you to appreciate the world that's been built in a very different sense. And it is interesting because it's just like, why choose this plot to do this format? And then I'm like, but I can't imagine any other one being turned in this way.
Yeah.
Because this one is just so ripe for ISN to spin.
Yeah, I just am so proud of them to doing it, to just saying, this is the episode. We are going to fully commit to this, because even other versions of this, like the Battlestar Galactica equivalent, is mainly us watching them make the report, and then we get to see the report they made for like 1 minute at the end of the show, and all the characters reacting to it like, yeah, that was all right. Well, and even the second episode like this for Babylon 5 in season 4, that's a majority of the episode. Half the episode is the reporters wanting to do this this story and then getting permission, and then we see how they twisted it. Here it is immediately we cut to all of these new things. We've got hypertext caption included, and Cynthia Talkman on her weird giant tower pedestal thing, and all of the graphics and the ads and the lack of music too. I was looking at this on a technical end this episode, noting down how drastically different it is from the usual fare that we get for B5, and the fact that there's very little implementation of music, and that there's lots of uncomfortable natural ambience and silence, because that's how the news works, where they ask a biting question and the person either doesn't know how to respond, or they give a really great response or a bad response. And usually in a show like this, they would play some musical stings to emphasize that dramatic point. But here it is just like you're watching the uncomfortable realities of a camera pointed at somebody. So yeah,
especially I felt that especially with the Delenn interview.
Oh yeah, and Sheridan as well, when they say to him, "But we didn't lose the war, did we?" And he just sits in his chair mulling over that one and going, "Yeah, you're right, we didn't lose.
Technically,
No, we didn't lose. You're right." But yeah, they break the format and they tell the story, and it's right. You do question at first, why isn't this just a normal episode? Why did they take this plot about the shooting party happening above B5 that escalates into a bigger thing, why didn't they just tell that like a normal B5 episode? Why is it that this one is being done?
What's special about this?
What's special about this? And in all honesty, you could still rework the story underneath this report as just a normal episode of B5. You could still do that. That's what's great about it, in all honesty, is there is a real episode's plot here, which I think makes a difference in comparison to some of its other contemporaries in this type of storytelling, where, again, we just recently, you and I, watched the Battlestar episode, and the story that she's reporting on is okay, but it still feels like it would have been a B plot in a traditional Battlestar Galactica episode. Of, in that one, somebody sending death threats to the Colonel, and then they figure out who it is, and it's fine. Here, there is actual bigger dramatic stakes that could have been a turning point episode in season 2, and it still serves as that when we watch it. They are escalating the war in ways where now Babylon 5, the place of peace, is being used as a weapons drop-off point, which completely destroys the entire purpose. And we have to see our crew deal with the horrors of war encroaching on their idealistic station.
Our ships have the right to carry any cargo they choose. We will not surrender our sovereign rights.
The sovereign rights of any race end when they threaten innocence.
Enough!
They're doing what they always do! Using details to distract us from doing what must be done!
On this watch, I was paying more attention to the way that they manipulate certain things. And it's not to the extent that the follow-up episode does it, where it's so contrived.
So manipulated.
The way that they alter the facts and alter the presentation to make Babylon 5 look like a complete and utter fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
But the footholds of that are here. The senator that they choose to speak to, the questions that they ask, the statistics that they choose to share.
Her coda at the end, in which it's the whole, we learn through struggle and pain, isn't that the way we do it? That whole thing, too, is
very, very shadow mentality.
And very Earth mentality in this show as well, which shows, again, which demonstrates how much influence we've garnered through the chess game that is the Shadow War happening all of this time. Yeah, you're right. I think it does a really, really interesting job of how, when you just look at Cynthia as a character, we don't get to know her outside of those little brief moments like the Kosh interview scene where she tries to get an interview, where we get the little glimpse of who the real Cynthia is in comparison to the presenter, the host, the reporter that she has to put on for the camera.
How tenacious she is in the pursuit of the story in actuality, rather than the calm demeanor that she puts on when she's reporting.
The articulate performance that has to be put on, such as when she's at the very end summing everything up. She's obviously is a very well written piece of her unpacking the experience, but in a way that's digestible to others. That doesn't necessarily mean honesty on her part. There's those moments where she's interviewing Delenn, and the way she presses her, you can tell that this is something that the character of Cynthia the reporter wants, either because she does have a bigotry herself against Delenn in the Minbari, or
it'll be good for ratings.
It'll be good for ratings, or you've got to get this story, or it's something that needs to be explored.
To get this scoop.
Yeah, it's a chance to get a scoop, but also this is a mystery this whole Delenn situation for many people. They don't know what it is, and it confuses them. And Cynthia is an example of that too. It's like, well, it's my job to delve into this, but she's biased as well. This is broken up into interviews, segments. Did you have a particular favorite or one that stuck out to you?
The Psychor ad is hard to go past, right?
Of the ads?
Yeah.
Of that stuff? Yeah.
Like, it sticks out to me so much.
Trust the core. They're your friend. Yeah. Johnny.
We've got lots of testing centers around for your convenience.
We're always around. Yeah, I love, the Psychor ad, let's just get into that. The little kid was in Star Trek Next Gen in Disaster, great episode of Next Gen, where Picard's stuck with him and a few other kids in a turbo lift. He grows molds and funguses and stuff. I love the perfect casting on that little boy, where he has the traditional little boy 90s blonde haircut, like the little bowl fringe, and then by the end of it, they've swooped it back into like a nice Aryan boy. It is...
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful in its simplicity.
It's very funny. I think it gets away with what it is by being really, really funny. Because I can complain that I think that the Psychor ad is not at all subtle in, hey, Earth is evil, we have evil this, while in comparison to other elements in the episode and the series, there's been far more subtle ways of demonstrating that, and this is so overt and so overarched that it is on the nose. That doesn't matter to me because it brings a smile to my face and makes me laugh when the Psychor guy teleports in like he special effects into the room and they're all happy to see him. It makes me laugh. I'm thinking about it right now. It's making me giggle. Or the hard cut of 2 weeks later, or however how much time has passed, and the little boy's in the full Psychor uniform, and he's got the haircut, and he's just this scary little Nazi, and they're all happy and smiling, and it's just fucking great.
Yeah. And then it also makes me sad because then I remember that there's a distinct lie in the fact that he's seeing his mother again.
Yeah. Oh, come on. They're all happy.
They're all happy. But it's hard for me to pick a favorite segment of the actual program itself because they all perform slightly different functions. They're all there for a distinct reason. So it just feels like comparing apples and oranges to try and
Sheridan loves oranges. He does love them. He does love oranges. I'm sorry, I just have to interject that. Somebody's listening and they wanted to just let it be known he does like oranges.
Yeah.
How they didn't ask him about oranges in the interviews is beyond me. Beyond me that Cynthia didn't immediately walk up to him and ask him how's the garden going, and he's like, I'm growing all of these oranges. We're actually having a bit of a problem. People want to grow other fruits and vegetables, and I just want oranges in there. We had docker strikes, now we're having strikes about this, and I'm not going to let them. I'm not going to pay fucking rent, and I'm not going to grow other fruits and vegetables in the garden. I'm growing just oranges because I love the pulp. But I get what you're saying. This episode is very elaborate, and each interview and segment are all serving their own purposes whilst also still tying together with the overall story and theme of the episode. Like, you have backstory monologues, you have world building scenes, you have comedy moments, you have obviously story beat moments and larger story moments for the series with the war, and you have all of that stuff, the political commentary going on and just that stuff. It's very hard to pick. I mean, the Psycho one stands out because it is the most, is it the most out of place for the show? Because it does feel like Paul Verhoeven Starship.
Absolutely.
RoboCop Starship Troopers thing. But it's very funny.
I just don't know what to do anymore.
Don't worry, Johnny. We'll take care of it from here.
Mom, look, a psychop.
That's right, Johnny. You know, there are a lot of other kids who feel just the same way you do. They're confused and afraid, but they don't have to be. The problem isn't that other kids don't like you. It's that they don't understand you. But we do. You're special. You're a latent telepath about to come into full bloom.
What about the Kosh scene?
It's adorable in a weird way. It's like Cynthia losing her shit is like, oh, she is human.
Yeah. She's not just the reporter who's smiley and nice and doing little quips.
We get to see under the mask.
Yeah.
And it's nice that we get that moment with her because we know all of these other characters. So we know what's under the mask that they're putting on for the cameras.
Yeah, we know the hypocrisy or the innocence and naivete of certain people. While with her, she's new. We don't know her. We only know her for this episode. We don't know who she is. That moment where we get the footage of them setting up and she is just this gung-ho, did we get it? Did we get it? Tell me we got it. And then it cuts back to her in full and so there we go. Like the mask that she has to put on as the reporter we see for the majority of the episode, and we know, having watched the news, that is a role that people play and can get away with so much because they are I'm just doing my job. I'm just seeking the truth. I'm trying to be an impartial or unbiased bystander in things, and we know that's not always the case. In fact, rarely is it ever, it seems like, and that applies here. What I love about the Kosh thing, though, too, is one, you're waiting for them to interview Kosh. Because when this whole thing happens and they're interviewing all the ambassadors, you know that this is an episode where all the characters are going to be in it, except for Warren Keffer and Talia, of course. We don't have time to include those characters, but we know that a lot of the big hitters are going to be here, and you yourself are thinking, are they going to interview Kosh? Are they going to get Kosh? Are they going to get Kosh? What would he say to them?
You know, he's been friendly with Sheridan a bit more, so, maybe.
The visual is very funny. Of the reporter at the doorway of the ambassador who's like this big goofy
waiting to ambush an omnipotent being.
And then the guy is just like, oh no, I'm gonna go back inside. It calls back to how we see that happen in the media all the time, where there are the press outside waiting for them to come out of their house.
Paparazzi are a typical example of this.
Yeah, and then the person has to either walk out or they just go back inside. But it's really amusing to see that same kind of thing, that usual thing that we've taken as a standard for media, news and the paparazzi thing, something that we are just accustomed to. But doing it with the visual of it being Kosh, it's like Kosh is Lindsay Lohan to them, like this sought-after celebrity that they must chase down, but it's Kosh who will not speak to them and goes back into his fucking creepy little room with all the smoke in there. This brings a smile to my face. It has to be brought up. I mean, it has to be highlighted because, in a way, this is a part of why the episode's format exists, yeah? To have that kind of fun, to have the journalist interview the alien guy, and the alien guy just doesn't want to, and that's why it's here.
It's Ambassador Kosh over here!
Mackie, quick, the camera. Ambassador Kosh! Ambassador! Cynthia Torkman, ISN News. Can we ask you a few questions? Ambassador Kosh! Did we get that? Tell me we got that. Did we get it?
This episode, does it break its own existence by the fact that one of the questions that arises is, why isn't there ISN reporters and a whole ISN station on Babylon 5 all the time?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you have outposts and stuff like that all over the world for different places.
This is a city in space. Why doesn't
Yeah.
it have news reporters stationed there?
You know what? I never fully stopped to question it because I'm just like, oh, it just is. But now that I'm like, well, you know what? We don't have a news station in Antarctica.
Yeah, but Antarctica doesn't have 250,000 people there.
No, but it does always have interesting scientific developments going on. There's always people that are coming and going, and
I don't think...
there's constantly stuff going on down there that would be interesting for the rest of the world to know, but we don't have a post there because it would be inconvenient and costly.
I just disagree with that comparison point. The fact that my hometown, which is a rural town in Australia and a shithole, has a news station in there, says so much. I think it's unfair to compare it to Antarctica because Antarctica is like an inhospitable place that's only there for researchers. And researchers can transmit their facts and information to to back, and that can be given around the world. It's not as if it is a place that is thriving with people with events such as, remember the time in Antarctica the woman with the cure to immortality visited? Or there was almost several intergalactic wars that broke out over it, or the country next door was a planet with a super weapon in the middle of it, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many things that are happening at Babylon 5 that are so high profile, and they mention it throughout this episode, that there's opinion pieces, there's bets, there's money placed on it, there's political pressures. The fact
Do
that
they even have one on Mars, though?
Yes, of course. That's my question of, does this episode, because it exists the way it does, just bring up one of the weird little spots in the well-formed, well-constructed universe of this show? Does it just point out one of the spots that was never really filled in? Because if it was, we wouldn't really have this episode the way it is, where it's like a visiting journalist who has a wacky adventure.
Yeah.
I love this episode. I love the other one too. But I think about that a lot of, well, this just raises the question of, why isn't this happening daily? Why isn't there journalists? Why isn't there the
why
command
has it
staff?
taken several years for them to do this story?
Yeah, why isn't the command staff having to deal with the press all the time? It's just one of those things where, I know this is one of those comments where it's like, Ryan, don't delve into this too much because we want to still have fun with the show and the world and whatever, and I do too, but let's be real also. Babylon 5 is meticulous and goes out of its way to fill in this, like, oh, the station spins this way and there's oxygen here and there's a special type of toilets and they have to pay rent for this and they don't have water and these people do have water, this, and the doors open this way and the ding-dong bell sounds like, can I come in? And their hand sticker, their links work like this, and their badges represent this. They go into agonizing detail. And the Star Fury is operating in space like this. They go into agonizing detail in this show of how the station works, and that there are ramifications and things that happen. Like, there are homeless people, there are shop vendors who have to pay rent, there are the corrupt policemen.
Even if it was as simple as them saying that they don't have enough money to rent out enough space on Babylon 5 to set up a station, because we know the square footage is expensive on Babylon 5.
Yeah, I just wish there was actually any commentary on it, because they can set up...
but I'm saying, It could be simple as that. It could be more expansive. They could have done something with that idea. But I don't care that they didn't.
I guess I care because we had a whole episode dedicated to them opening up a gift shop. And it's like, oh, okay, we can afford to have a gift shop because it was a fun, wacky plot for that episode. But then it's like, yeah, ones like this where it's like, why is there news people here all the time? But hey, we have business people here all the time. It's just one of those things where, again, I agree with what you say. It's you in a way you don't care, but it is something where it's just an aspect of the show that wasn't colored in, because if it was, you would have to write around it more. You would have to come up with ways to work it in or out of the story way more, and they just weren't willing to do that. So this is a compromise in a way too, of like, here's an episode where the news comes to the station. And I know some people may be saying, well, it's a military outpost, so they don't have the news. Yeah, I don't think that one flies as much when they have so much civilian trade and stuff happening and businesses and everything like that. And they keep mentioning there's a city in space where, yeah, there would still be news people hovering around there all the time. If anything, it would be a bigger deal.
Well, certainly the events on Babylon 5, which took place during your recent visit, are emblematic of what many of us in Earthdome have been worried about for some time. By placing an Earth installation between warring factions, we risk being drawn into a conflict that has nothing to do with us or Earth interests. If we had not been in that place at that time, the terrible loss of life might have been avoided.
On the other hand, Senator, they are at war with one another. People die in war.
Yes, but it wouldn't have happened in our backyard.
My favorite interview was Garibaldi's interview. I loved Garibaldi's interview where he just doesn't want to fuck up. And
yeah, I don't want to get fired.
I don't want to fuck up and get fired. I want to stay here. And I love the interview because it is very accurate to his character overall. It gives us a deep insight, and it rings true to what we know Garibaldi to be, this weird little man who has this very Rube Goldberg machine way of thinking about the world, this elaborate logic that he has, and he demonstrates it and applies it here with how he just wants to be bored, but he can't be bored because the world is the way it is, but he's fine with that because that's a good thing and we learn from it. And I don't know, this is just one of those character building scenes that really struck for me. What do you think about that one? Or what is...
I think the Garibaldi one works very well because it's clearly an insight that we naturally wouldn't really get otherwise. Like, it makes sense that is reinforced and explored in this moment, in this context. I really like the spliced footage of is Babylon 5 worth it?
Yeah.
And the different reasons that they all give for why, yes, it is worth it.
I like the varying degrees of how genuine and disingenuous people are in their answers to it as well, where we have Londo being the standout example of somebody who's lying through his teeth, being self-serving and just using the excuse, using the moment to put down others, to say the Narns suck, and hey, you humans are great if you side with us, that is. And then you have Jakar, who is disillusioned now because of the events that have been going on in this one and other ones, in which he used to believe that this could serve a purpose, but now he doesn't. And even then, that's slightly disingenuous because we've known since season 1 that he never really tried to engage with the whole mission statement of Babylon 5. It's only been in recent times, in a very short window of time, where he's really tried and it's still failed for him, but you understand why. I really do love that his interview is him midway through walking through the Zocalo or wherever he is, and he's just like, I don't have time. I used to and I don't anymore, while everyone else is sitting in their quarters looking very lavish and giving their moment to really lament and shine upon what they've learned in these 36 hours. And Jakar is just, I don't have time. Yeah, I'm just walking. Yeah, whatever. I don't believe in it. Yeah, I'm not too sure anymore. What about the most important interview? We haven't mentioned it, really. The breakout star, Corwin.
I don't even know where to begin with Corwin.
He got a name.
I really enjoy the way that he approaches it, but I always end up watching fun of it in the background, being like, "What you saying?"
And then approving.
What she saying? Okay. You haven't fucked it up yet. You gonna fuck it up now?
Yeah.
I need to look like I'm not listening.
And nodding in approval of the obviously pre-thought out, pre-written statements that he has to say, or like the do not say this, and so he doesn't, and she just nods like, yeah, good.
You are towing the line effectively.
This is another example of why the episode exists to me, where we get to have a little moment where we interview somebody who's always in the show, yet us, the audience, knows nothing about them. And
get to see their dynamics in a way that no other episode would be able to present in the same way.
Yeah, and Corwin gets a name, he gets a little bit more of a character to him, and he's a dork, he gets a funny thing to do here. What I really love about this, and I've always loved about this, is it's rewarding the viewer for having paid attention to the background actors, because I know many people do get fixated and attached to those people in shows such as Star Trek and Battlestar and this and Stargate, where there's those actors in the background who are kind of maybe in every episode, but we never get to know them
consistently on screen.
Yeah, and people get drawn to them, and they find out their names or give them a name and want to know more. And even though there is no reason to know more because they don't actually need to serve a purpose, there is a rewarding element to a show acknowledging that and giving him his moment. Here's an interview with Corwin. You guys have seen him since season 1. He's always kind of been here. Now he gets a name and he gets a little moment. We're not promising he's going to be an actual main character in the show, but he's here. We go, here we are. And
we are giving time to him, not to Keffa.
No, who needs Keffa? But I was just curious of why this... and why someone like Corwin works, where Corwin never truly develops into a fully fledged character. We know very little about him, but we get to know enough. Why does this moment and this type of thing work here? Why does it work here when we do Star Trek Discovery, where they painstakingly and awkwardly fail or try to improve upon this issue with their bridge crew characters who for 4 seasons many people still say I don't know who they are, and that's an issue. While here I still don't know who Corwin is after all these years, but at the same time I feel as if I do because of a moment like this.
I know what matters. I know that he is there in a limited capacity, and we get to know him enough for that role. It isn't them throwing a spotlight on this character being like, and now for Corwin!
And his tragic backstory.
And, his unique skill that plays into this plot and is gonna come in real handy soon.
Yeah.
Thinking of Owo's diving history.
That one guy's history where it's like, my town flooded and now I've learned a lesson. It's like, thanks, bro. Whatever. Can we move on? I think one of the things too is this is a bonus. not a substitution. This is a bonus to get
It
this
doesn't
Corwin
take away
moment.
from anything. It just adds.
It's a treat to get this little Corwin moment because we are well established and know our main crew of characters intimately that we don't really need to know Corwin. But it's a treat when we get a little moment like this. While in Discovery, many people, including ourselves, have lots of issues with our main characters and so project and reach out to other ensemble cast members because we need something. Maybe if we project onto Owo that she's this kind of character, that can make it more entertaining for me or more substantive. I don't need to do that with B5 characters because I know who Sheridan and Ivanova and Jakar and Londo and Veer and all of these people are in very nuanced ways where those can sustain me for the entirety of the show. So I don't need to know who this background person is and don't even care that we don't learn their name. So when this moment happens and when we get other little scenes with this character, such as in season 5 when he's practicing the hat trick for Rebo and Zudi, it's a treat, it's a dessert, it's a reward. It is an extra thing rather than a replacement for something or a substitution. And that's how I look at this. And also just it's a funny scene. Like with the Psychor scene, it's a funny scene that no other character would realistically have. So let's give it to Corwin because he's always there. And wouldn't it be funny if Ivanova was in the background reacting to it, but looking like she's trying not to react? Very well done.
And you've never felt that your safety has been compromised?
No, ma'am.
So this has been a positive experience for you. You enjoy working with everyone?
Yes. It's a calm, pleasant environment. I don't think I've ever seen anyone get upset here.
One interview that I wanted to delve into that I'm not too sure how I feel about is Franklin's.
The spacing one?
Yeah, talk us through it and what you think about it.
Yeah, it's an odd one because it makes sense, but it feels wrong. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, in a way.
Because it makes sense that he would take it as a soapbox moment and that he's hyper fixated on the lives that he is saving. And it's just like, oh boy, you're strung out. Oh boy, those stems.
Yes, stems, yes. Yes. I wish he was taking stems. No, stems. Yeah, I don't... Here's how I look at it. This is... And I've seen this happen in many shows and in plays a lot. JMS had a really good monologue, and he wanted to use it. And this is the monologue.
Yeah.
We have no context for why Franklin is this fucking angsty at the moment, even with the stims addiction thing that you're talking about. His character hasn't reached this point of strung out and this point of angst. And so it comes across to me that JMS had a really, really detailed and brutal, brooding monologue about being spaced, and he wanted to use it, and maybe he wrote it for Franklin in mind, and we got it. It sticks out as a sore thumb for me. I like the monologue. I think it is well written and well performed, but it comes out of left field and
Like,
it leaves immediately.
It makes sense, but it feels wrong.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it feels at least out of place. I feel as if this was...
It feels like it's wrongly placed and present in this episode. Another time, another place, this monologue could have been amazing.
Oh, yes.
And the performer does it justice. It's not his fault. It's the context.
Which is for kings. Yeah, I don't know. It just sticks out too much in an episode with many things that are, of course, alluring to the viewer, like the Psychor ad and the Kosh thing, and Delen's interview is very brutal. But all of those things feed into one another for me, while this is brooding. Oh, I guess Franklin's really brooding today. I know his character can be very serious and brooding like that, but the degree in which he is here feels as if it's a really special type of thing going on, and we aren't just privy to it, and maybe that's good in its own right, but to me, it comes across as a writer who had this really good monologue, and they just knew that they weren't going to be able to use it for a while, and this is an episode where they could slot it in nicely. And this is a show where there's many monologues and speeches where they get slotted in and they work, and this is just one where I look at it and go, I'm not too sure about that. Just not too sure. Delenn.
Yes.
Oh, man. This is where you can't say that ISN isn't evil, huh?
They really try and do her dirty, and she's struggling. She's struggling through it.
She doesn't know how to do this type of politicianing. This hounded by the press. She's not used to it.
Because Mbryo people would not work like this.
Could you imagine a Mbryo journalist?
No, because like
would they put the little paper in one of their bones? Like,
I was thinking more about the fact that, like, you know, Mbryo don't question Mbryo and, like, you know, take them on their word and accept it and
if
move on.
If Nehruun was a journalist, could you imagine him doing journalism?
Oh, he does investigations.
Delenn, I've got a question for you. What are your foreign policies, Delenn of the Council of the Grey? Why do you have a human face? No more. You've been banished. To live forever on Babylon 5, running around.
With your precious humans.
Which alien race? You know how some sci-fi things, they do that where there's like this alien race, these people? Which alien race in here would be the journalist race?
I can't think of a genuine answer, but the first one that came to my head was the Pakmara.
I thought of the what are they called? The Gaim, the metallic praying mantis people with their little translator bowls next to them.
Ooh, what about a vicar?
That need a Jovian sunspot to really get them through. I would love for Zathras's people to be journalists. That would be fun. Where they ask questions like that.
Zathras would like to know. Zathras is curious about your foreign policy. Zathras wants to know if you're going to release the emails.
I love that. I would love that.
Can you imagine him asking, what?
He's banging his hands on the table.
No, asking senators about, like, the
taxes.
No. I'm thinking of at the time of the recording, the recent rent boy scandal in Australian politics. Of, like, did you bring this prostitute? Did you bring this prostitute? What did you do? Zathras wants to know what you did in the prayer room.
Zathras wants to know if you had sexual relations with that woman. I did not. Sexual relations with that woman.
No, but Delenn's scene is heartbreaking. It is perfectly written.
Her biting her fist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, oh, honey, I want to protect you. But I know that you can handle this. You don't need my help.
Yo, girl boss, you can handle it.
You don't need my help. You'll talk to
Linnea, probably, and
you'll
cry on his shoulder.
You'll have a chat to Linnea.
Cry on his shoulder. He'll think, I'm a nice guy. I've earned this.
I'm getting close to her. Finally, I'm the one that she's choosing.
Do you think Linnea, his TikTok, are those pickup artists? That's what he watches on TikTok, is Linnea?
Oh, I think that's on his For You page. I don't think that's the content that he makes. makes.
I'm not saying he makes, he watches.
Yeah.
Lanier doesn't make pickup artist content. No. Lanier
it
teaches
just
you
keeps on popping up.
Lanier teaches
along
you
with
maths.
some motorcycle stuff.
Yeah. And card counting.
Oh, lots of history.
Lots of history.
Some Centauri thirst traps occasionally.
Yeah, because he was forever changed. Yeah. His eyebrow, lack of eyebrow, but his brow raises up every time he sees a Centauri. Just am I into that now? No. Of course not. But am I? But
I think he would do some self-defense.
Teach us self-defense. Yeah. I would love that. But we get the Delenn scene. It's tragic. It's perfectly written, perfectly played, though. It makes sense that the ISN would do what they did. It would make sense that any journalist from Earth would do what they did. It's cruel, it's mean-spirited, but how many times have we seen the media do that? To people. Countless times.
I'm just
whether it's justifiable or not, because sometimes you yourself, and this is, let's be real, sometimes a part of it is we, the viewer, relish and enjoy when a journalist goes in on a person and really gives them one. And it's a cycle like that where it's
there is a reason that dude that deliberately tries to piss off celebrities keeps on getting interviews and keeps on getting hired by various places. Thinking of the one that really tried to do a number on Robert Downey Jr. when he was
the British guy?
Yeah.
The one who got told to shut his butt down by Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are those guys, right? Where even Richard Ayoade's like, what interview do you want from me? Because I'll give you that if you want. You don't want a real interview.
No.
Yeah, and she's manipulative. She goes with leading questions and eventually just statements at her to then make Delenn cry on camera. It's horrible, but I've seen it.
Enthralling.
I've seen it before on the real life news. Happen countless times. And that moment there, right, that open xenophobia and bigotry and hatred there really harkens back to what we know of Earth in this show, but it also makes you think about what we see in the world around us and in media and news and YouTube and commentary things in a similar way, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's the uncomfortable nature of what has become a truth of if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, and
the more brutal something is, the more people can't look away from it, so the higher your ratings are probably gonna be.
And because the news is considered this prestigious thing for a lot of people, that there's this image and veneer to it being this place of I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of this, we trust the
higher
news.
Art form sort of thing.
It's objective and we trust it.
Yeah.
And so we grew up.
There's values.
Yes.
In the news that we project that we also know are not the truth anymore. That is what the news tells us.
Yeah.
That it's, like this station is going to give you this kind of news and this is what the news is really about.
But there is this naivete for many people when it comes to journalism and the news that it's this fully unbiased thing and there is no real agenda other than the truth. And that isn't obviously real for a lot of places, if any. And the point being is many journalists and many news organizations get away with doing really horrendous things like what Cynthia does here because of that construct. Oh,
you owe us this as well.
You owe us this, but also just, that's just the story. oh, that you think about Delenn rather than the cause of the interviewer in these situations when it comes to real life.
Because
we grew up
know Delenn.
Yeah, we know as the viewer,
But
we know Delenn.
We know Delenn, like, when you imagine it of, like, being just a normal Joe Schmo back on Earth or even on Mars, watching this ISN special, you would not feel for Delenn the way that you do.
Like we do as viewers because we know them. And that's the same with Londo and all of them. They all have these things where it's like we have seen them in episodes before, so we know the layers to them. But this, they're having to put on things, or the reporter is throwing certain questions at them that removes those layers that we are accustomed to and puts them in a certain light. What I really find fascinating is how this makes me think about the news in general. Of when we grew up in a post 9/11 world. You know, our youth, we were there, and I remember growing up how these type of interviews we see here were just the standard place, and they still kind of are, obviously. Where growing up, there were many reporters and interviewers talking to any person who wasn't, mainly Middle Eastern people, and throwing things at them like this, and doing the similar type of thing of framing the enemy, framing this in a way that we obviously look at now quite easily. A lot of people look at now as very despicable, but that wasn't the agreed upon viewpoint at that time. That was just what the news did because we were afraid.
Because the news is an expression of what a society values, what a society is interested in, and what they believe. Because ideas are reproduced through media.
What would you say to them? To all the husbands and wives and children and brothers and sisters of the people who were killed in the war with your people, and now see a Mbryo with a human face.
I'm sorry. Can we stop this?
Journalism does serve a real-life, real-world purpose, and that's what I really love about this episode, where we talk about the disgusting and morally dubious things that this report is doing. But the writing itself isn't so overt in its disdain and hatred for journalism, because at the same time, JMS being a former one himself, it recognizes that it is a function of our society. The news needs to be reported upon. Are there fundamental and systematic problems with journalism? Yes, there is. But at the same time, it does have its benefits. It does tell us things. It does inform us. And we see that here with her story. What I love is her story isn't 100% biased and evil. It obviously has that littered throughout there as well, but it isn't just you walk away going, oh, that was a funny episode where they showed us how fully evil Earth is. She brings up some genuinely great points about the station and about the series we've been watching thus far, and the characters involved. And her report does highlight some things going on that would be good to know for the people back home watching this as well. And so I really love that the episode, from the writer's standpoint, is saying, here is our version of the news that reflects upon where the news is currently. We don't like how stories are told and the bias of the media, but at the same time recognize that we also do need the news. What do you think about all of that and how this episode tackles that?
Yeah, it's like, this is complicated. This is not as straightforward as this is good or this is bad. This is complicated. And here's an opportunity to think about it.
Yeah, here's a great opportunity to think about it. I just really loved how the characters were playing their role for the news. That the way that Jakar is shown in this is he's far more off-putting and cold, because to the camera he is the scary red-eyed alien man who's angry,
playing into the lizard-like nature of the Narn.
Yes, and we know they're not fully lizards. We know they're marsupials. Don't give me any fucking comments about it. But their aesthetic is lizard-like. We know this, right? But yeah, that they're the most alien-looking, meaning they're the bad ones, and you see that framed perfectly within the shots, how the camera will be at a lower angle and showing off their red eyes and having them in groups together and giving their statements. And since
when we see the Centauri out and about, they're just goofing around in the background
and having a jovial time. Londo is sitting comfortably on his couch or walking around just jovially talking about the most horrendous shit possible. Yeah, the way that when it comes to the Centauri and Narn, it's quite subtle how you can see the favoritism between the two, how there's a favoritism towards the Centauri. They look like us, we've known them longer, they're friendly with us, and they're also expanding like we want to expand, and we want to align ourselves with them. So she's not going to ask Londo as many hard-hitting questions as she does with Jakar. She's not going to throw statistics about the war at Londo like she does with Jakar. But to, again, the credit of the reporting and of the writer, she also does give Jakar and the Narn lots of humanizing moments and provide their context. We get lots of backstory, we get lots of things, and they also point out what a hypocrite Londo is in the episode as well, but not enough. That's the thing. They do, but not enough.
They don't push it.
They don't push him. They don't criticize him because they don't want to pick a side.
Not the party line.
Yeah, and I thought that was really great that we know the characters so well that we are seeing them perform, and Londo's the greatest example where...
And that a lot of that comes from the writing, but the performers pick it up and run with it.
What did you think about Londo here? Because he's speaking
trash. He's so trash. And it's just like, oh, Londo.
This is what people see him as, though, right?
Yeah.
We get to see why he's done everything. Why he's done everything the way he's done it. We see his remorse and his inner turmoil and the nightmare visions of the future he has, and how he's conflicted in those small, quiet, intimate moments of horror and realization. We see that because we watch the show. But none of the other characters get to see that. What they get to see is what he is in this ISN report, which is this egotistical, manipulative, chauvinistic, imperialist pig dog who's lying through his teeth and has no sense of remorse, is this racist guy. And for me, it's heartbreaking because this is what he puts out there. But we know that this is the guy that started the war. This is the guy that made the wrong choice. And he's damned. But here, he's doubling down on it and saying, we didn't start the war. It was those Narns, remember? They're the savages. We just tried to civilize them. And we know Londo to be better than that. And that's what makes it really sad, is we know Londo's better than this, but this is the mask that he has put on, and he is going to keep this on for a lot of people around him. And he's just fucking disgusting in this, and I loved his performance so much. Peter Jurasik got to chew the scenery like no man's business, and it was a joy to watch every second, and also horror to watch, because his character is just such a complex web of contradictions and turmoil and nuances.
We gave them technology centuries ahead of their own, took them with us to the stars, taught them laws, civilized them. They repaid us with terror and death.
So you're saying that the Centauri originally came to help the Narn?
Of course. And at considerable expense, I might add, which is why we finally left. We wished them well, but the cost, you see.
Then you weren't driven off the Narn homeworld?
Please. The Narn have rewritten history enough, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about now for a word.
I think it's time to get into the spotlight and delve into the performance of a particular guest star.
Yeah, so for the spotlight, we talk about an actor or an actress that was in the episode. We go through what we thought about them here and what we know them from or what they've starred in, any interesting pieces of trivia that can highlight anything of note. So who are we talking about? Who are we discussing for this one?
We are delving a bit further into our news presenter.
Cynthia,
played by Kim Zimmer.
Yes. So I love her performance. I've always been thrown, though, that we never have seen her and we never see her again. And why this isn't the usual Lady Jane.
Because it's a special report.
It's a special report. Yeah, Dan Randall for the second episode like this, it's a special report.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always liked her performance. I've always thought it was very, very good. And whenever I've looked her up, I've always been shocked that I don't know her from anything. She's done work, but I don't know any of it. It's beyond my years or beyond my country. A lot of it is very American soap operas. So
she's only got like 23 acting credits.
Yeah, but a lot of episodes of things.
Oh, yeah. She
thousands.
Solidly worked because she pretty much did like just TV and TV movies.
Mm-hmm.
And a number of her main roles have been on soap operas.
Except for here, where for some reason she decided to do one episode of this and then immediately followed up with one episode of Seinfeld. And then she went straight back to soaps. It's very odd, but I really do love her performance here. I think she does a really marvelous job of capturing these type of news hosts. She really, you know who she reminded me of to bring it locally to us? Tracy Grimshaw is the host of A Current Affair. She herself rarely does direct interviews or goes out on the field. She's usually just in the studio kind of introducing the segments that we're going to get, but her look and her energy really reminds me of Tracy Grimshaw, where Tracy Grimshaw is also a complicated media personality too, because she's one of those people where it's kind of hard to read what her point of view is, but you also know what she doesn't like as well, and usually she doesn't like poor people is what her thing is.
That's like the bread and butter of
A Current Affair. Dole bludgers, these poor people. But she really reminds me of Tracy Grimshaw. The hair, the outfits, the way she speaks, the vernacular used. I wonder who, if anyone in particular during this period of time in America
was modeled.
She was modeled after. If there was any specific people that JMS was inspired by and said, this person, their bits and bobs, I can meld into a character. But I was really reminded of Tracy Grimshaw, who's still pretty active now. And so that was who I thought. What about you? Was Tracy one that ever leapt to your mind, or did you just take it as a whole cloth character on its own?
Nah, I was just like, this is touching on things that I'm familiar with, of like from Australian media, of like A Current Affair, where it's like the sensationalized but everyday people stories of like, oh my god, this awful neighbor.
Yeah.
And it's like being projected to a national audience, or like The Project, which is like a panel news show where they do like comedy bits.
Where they're former comedians who are now turned serious journalists. And it's this weird, is this supposed to be a satirical thing like the The Daily Show, the Colbert Report used to be, or is this a genuine news thing? And then it just became a genuine news thing, but with weird comedians doing it, and you're like, okay, it's lost its thread here. Yeah, it's very bizarre. I love another thing I love about her performance is you can't fully just say the character's a bad person or evil.
No, it's not one thing.
Yeah, because she gives us enough distance from whoever the real Cynthia is and the news presenter Cynthia for us to give our own interpretations on if she's a good person or a bad person. Like, is Cynthia a bad person, or is she just a journalist in the inherent flawed system that we see currently with the news, or we see in the universe of Babylon 5? I don't know. Or is she actually just a bad person? Is she an evil, xenophobic journalist? Or is that moment and those moments her just playing up to what you have to do for the job? Because we do hear in this show that the journalists of Babylon 5 in Babylon 5's universe have to play that game, just like Sheridan has to play the game of being a military commander and having to do things and present himself in ways that aren't flattering.
Do you know, this might be stupid or simplistic of me, but I don't think of her as being that evil, because I think if the character was meant to be that evil, they would have brought her back for
As
the follow-up.
Yeah.
When ISN is completely and utterly trashed.
I do wonder if there was any intention of bringing her back for that and seeing her do that, or if it was always they wanted another reporter that we had less of a familiarity with, so the ambiguity in that episode could be better played. I'm always been curious. I'm not 100% sure there, but yeah, I love her performance. I think she's one of the best guest star performances we've had this season, because she also does come across like a real journalist. Hearing that she's a soap opera actor, I'm not surprised, but in a way I kind of am, because we've had
daytime Emmy winner.
Yeah, I guess she has some cheesy line deliveries that are a little bit soap opera actory, but it's her doing that on purpose as the character of Cynthia, the reporter. Like when she does the whole,
it's purposeful.
The beauty in the beast, or whatever she says.
Yes, the beauty in the beast is in the eye of the
beholder.
beholder.
That's on purposely like that, and I've seen real life figures do that when they're doing their stories, their little corny thing tag at the end. But hearing that she's a soap opera person, I was a bit surprised, because we've had a few other soap opera people on Babylon 5, like Malcolm Biggs, the Australian, and he was very clearly a soap opera guy. You could really tell with other ones we've had here, and her, yeah, I guess I was just more surprised that she hasn't done more like other shows. Like, she's just really stuck to doing soap operas and then a smattering of shows like this in the interim. And it makes me question, why did she do this show? Why did she do Seinfeld when she rarely ever breaks away from those big soap operas she's in?
Was she just kind of between gigs?
Maybe just between gigs, or they worked for the same network and they said, hey, we've got a spot here. Do you want to do a one shot? And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll do a one shot. And then just did. So walk us through her career, or any interesting pieces of information you have.
She started out when she was about 24.
Mm-hmm.
So her first credit was in 1979 for The Doctors.
Yes, I have an interesting fact about The Doctors.
Where she played Nola Dancy Aldrich.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in 80 episodes.
So the interesting fact, I don't know if you read this, but The Doctors, I think she took over, or was the last casting choice, or there was some connection to Kathleen Turner there, where this woman reminds people of Kathleen Turner, and then she would be in a movie with Kathleen Turner as like her double. So for this actress, there was a brief window of time in which her and Kathleen Turner would kind of take each other's roles or be in similar roles against one another because they had this voice and look to them. And when I read that, I kind of nodded and went, I can see that in a little weird way. So yeah, that's something. So she started off with soap operas, and then she kind of moved from one to the next. There's obviously the other big hitters if you want to go through them.
Oh, but like she's not in the ones that like we know.
Us Australians know.
Yeah, like she's not in Days of Our Lives or The Young and the Restless.
Bold and Beautiful.
Like she's been on ones that have been more to the side, still very long running.
Yeah.
But not internationally well known. One of the other ones that she was in was The Guiding Light.
Yes, when I guested on the last Best Babylon 5 podcast, one of the hosts there, their mother watched The Guiding Light, and it was like, oh, she's in this, and everyone's like, of course she's in this, and I'm sitting there going, I've never even heard of this show. Never even heard of this show. Yeah, she was in The Guiding Light for ages. She was one of the main players in that, so that means something to people. Have you seen her in anything?
No.
An interesting fact that I actually picked up was I was curious of who she was married to. I saw the name and it was a hyperlink, so I followed it, and it's just a guy. He hasn't been in too many things himself. He's just this dude. But then I saw that they had a child who also had a hyperlink, and I was super excited to find out who their child is. Their son is an actor who is still working today. He was in It Follows as something, and he's still in a bunch of stuff. He's actively working in projects. He seems to be doing very well. The most notable thing for myself is, and for some people of a certain age demographic, he was the bully in the Fred movies and the Fred TV show. Nick the Bully, I do believe it was Nick the Bully, who was the best actor in all of those Fred movies outside of John Cena, because he knew what he was in.
So it's a long-standing joke for people to say, well, that would be the title of my memoir, or that's the title of your autobiography.
Yeah.
I guarantee that nobody can guess this woman's autobiography title.
Should we read her autobiography? Where she talks about B5? You think she talks about B5?
Nah, I think it's a bit too specific, because here is the title of Kim Zimmer's autobiography. I'm just saying, 3 deaths, 7 husbands, and a clone. My life as a daytime diva.
Okay, so her thing is all about what her characters and soap operas have gone through. That's fun.
I think a large part of it is focused on how Guiding Light was cancelled.
Oh, right. Yeah, we know Guiding Light, from what I know, is one of those soap operas that went into crazy territories, like having clones and magic.
Yeah, and it was just, like, apparently it's like, it's all this producer's fault.
Oh, cool. That actually sounds interesting. I love hearing autobiographies from people like JMS, for instance, and this lady who talk about the weird behind-the-scenes stuff of creations and then eventual endings of shows. Sounds fun. That's all we've got for her for this. Not too much information out there, but still an interesting figure who gave a really good performance in an episode that demands a lot. I mean, she's the center focus of this entire thing, and yet no point was I crying out, oh, I wish we were following Sheridan. Oh, the Lloyds of London are betting on it. What would you rate this one?
I think it still comes out of Yum Yums for me.
Yum Yum.
If I had to rate this on our system of Yum being bad and Yum Yum being good, it does land in Yum Yum.
Yum Yum.
Do you ever have this where something is just, you watch it and go, that was good? Like, to me, this is an easy yum yum, but then you question it because it landed so easily.
Second guessing it.
Yeah. Second guessing it, but I did enjoy this. It is what it is. Rachel, could you tell us all what we'll be talking about and watching next time?
On the next Babylon 5.
Episode 16. In the Shadow of Zahadum. Is Sheridan above the law? His heart overrides his head when he illegally detains a visitor. Adwasser.
Oh, Adwasser. Yeah.
Adwasser.
Morden? No way!
Who may know if Sheridan's wife, Anna, presumed dead on an ill-fated scientific exploration, is still alive.
No! I can't wait. People, make sure to give that episode a look over in the meantime. That will be fun. I can't wait to talk about that. That's a big episode. It's got Veer. Veer is back. He's back, baby, and he's got things he wants. People, you can make sure to check us out on the social media platform of your choice. We're on all of them practically. Your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Tumblr, TikTok. We haven't done MySpace or Bebo, but we could. All of the information is in the description.
No Club Penguin either.
Can we join Club Penguin? Can we join Neopets? Does that count as a social media platform site, or is that just a game? Can we play games on Neopets with our listeners? I don't know. Don't care. You can look at the description and it'll link you to our social media and you can follow us on there. We're always posting. We're always sharing things. We are always engaging with people, giving follow-ups to things that we didn't get to discuss here in the episode. Rachel, people can also directly email us if they're so inclined. Could you tell us all?
yumyumpod@gmail.com.
We also have a Patreon in which we work tirelessly to provide some exclusive bonus extra content. We have multiple tiers. We're going through the new Star Trek episodes as they come out on our top tier. We're doing the X-Men movies. We're giving our thoughts on video games, movies, TV shows, podcasts, board games, video games, all the games. The game of my heart and our thoughts on. You can join our Patreon, support us there if you have the means to do so or the inclination. You get to be a part of a group Discord if you do, and you can have some fun and talk to our fellow patrons there. It's a great place to be. YumYumPod on Patreon. Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the episode. Jakar.
But he wasn't the strongest with YYE.
He was a little bit too depressed. He had some daddy issues he had to unpack about how his dad was hung up from a Jawa tree or whatever it was. And so Jakar didn't get to say the words.
No, but we do.
We get to say the words, and his dad could have said the words to him as a final farewell after saying, "Make me proud, son, go kill some Centauri." He actually should have said, his dying raspy voice should have said,
"Good eating to you."
Mr. Keller!